Hello and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. It's Bailey and I hope you're having a great Wednesday or whenever you're listening to today's episode. Today we are diving into postpartum prep. And this is something I've been really eager to share about and kind of have referred back to often, just because I think it's something that gets so undervalued as honestly a society. And I even notice too some of the resistance that I personally have within myself to rest and actually take a period of time postpartum away from responsibilities, away from commitments, away from even socializing at a higher level, and just be with my family. And I think it's something that, of course, I cannot go into thinking I have 100% control over what it's going to look like or the experience, but there are some things that I'm implementing to just support my body postpartum, and or at least I'm planning to. I feel like some of you moms, if you are a mom, might be thinking like, oh, she has no idea. She's naive to know what recovery is really going to be like. And to some extent, yes, that is 100% true. And at no point do I want to sound like I know exactly what to expect postpartum. But I know that I can control how I treat my body and how I support my body. And that is something I'm very confident in. I have a great support system, a great husband, mom, grandmothers that can help me during this postpartum period that will also allow me to be able to take care of my body. I also know that I am responsible for sustaining the life of another person. And so it really is important to me that I'm taking care of myself. I think we've created this narrative that it's selfish to take care of yourself as a mom because you should be sacrificial. And yes, I 100% agree. Like, there is a level of sacrifice that comes by taking care of your children, taking care of your family and your husband. But at the same time, I have had just some things happen during pregnancy that have made me have such a push and such a desire to be able to support my vessel so well postpartum. There's just some things that I shouldn't say you can't do, but that like herbal remedies that aren't super researched, or I've had some rashes that have come up, and I know it's because a lot of my nutrient stores are being given to something living inside of me that I'm sustaining the life of right now. But I'm just like have such an eagerness and an excitement to support my body well postpartum so that I can then support my baby, right? I plan to primarily breastfeed. And of course, then you get kind of the, well, don't put all your eggs in one basket. But again, I am a person where if I'm telling myself I'm going to primarily breastfeed, that is what I need to even push through something that might be really difficult, or if it doesn't go as planned. I think there's a lot of that like wishy-washy, like, well, if it doesn't work, don't be hard on yourself. And I 100% believe that and agree with that. And I don't judge what or how you choose to nourish your child after you deliver. But for me, I am a very disciplined person. I'm a very stubborn person. And so I have to go into it telling myself like, no, you are primarily breastfeeding. That is what we are doing. We are going to make it work. And of course, it's not to that extent where my child will not be fed enough because I'm so stubborn and won't use formula. That's not the case, but it's just kind of that mentality that I have going into labor. Some other mentalities I have going into labor too is I've been doing some visualization. I've always kind of said like, until I'm in active labor, I think I'm going to be naive to like what's all happening in my body. But I know that fear is that receptor in our brain that is also very similar to our pain receptor. Those are the emotion of fear can be linked to that pain receptor. And so it can cause more pain if you go into something with that fearfulness or just kind of like scared. And so I'm trying to visualize the experience. And I was actually listening to the Skinny Confidential, Lauren Bosnick. She is a very intense person. I would say she's pretty extreme when it comes to some things that she does, but her episode around her Q&A around pregnancy was really interesting. And I had never really heard somebody talk about the visualizations that they're doing going into labor, or even that they had before they tried to conceive. So she talked about how she would visualize conceiving, and that conceiving was going to be easy and it was going to come naturally and it wasn't going to be a struggle. And then as she got pregnant, she now visualizes labor. Like, labor is going to be intense, but it's going to be also a very peaceful time and a connecting time with me and my husband. And it's not going to be earth-shattering screams and all of this pain, but it's going to be I don't know, just like how, and it's kind of hard to describe like how I'm deciding to visualize that experience. And again, you could visualize things forever and ever, and it could go a completely different way. But I really think there's so much power in our mind and how we even approach birth. And some of you might be listening and you are so far from this stage of life that this is not interesting, or maybe some of you are just interested, or if you've already gone through this, of course, there's so much wisdom that I know you could share about the postpartum experience or about labor in general. But for me, it's just, I'm not trying to think of it as this very scary, traumatic experience that's going to be so painful and completely just be the hardest I've ever pushed my body. Although 100%, like, I know it's not, I'm not naive to the fact that this is going to be difficult and that it's going to come with a lot of challenge. But I'm oddly really excited and eager to push my body to push my body in a way that I truly just never have. And again, to be able to experience that with my husband. Kind of getting into today's episode, I don't want to do too much of a catch up because I feel like I have a lot to say on this topic. And again, always check with your doctor if you are pregnant about anything that I say. I kind of have to say that, although I probably am one to do more of the research on my own and not check in with my midwife necessarily, because I do trust what they would have to say. But we were even at our appointment last week and she was like, there's so many incredible herbal remedies, but like, we just can't recommend them because there's not a lot of research. And so truthfully, I found I've had to do a lot of research on my own. But of course, like, do what you feel comfortable with. I'm just going to share my approach and my anticipated approach. But even kind of getting into labor, like, I don't want to have anybody else there except for my husband. I want that to be a time with just him and I, obviously, then the midwife. That's who we're working with. We go through a clinic in Lincoln. If you're in the Nebraska area, of course, I'm happy to share where we go. And so our midwife will be there, of course, to kind of walk us through this process. But I also think it is a very instinctual process. And as women, we've kind of, I don't know if we've lost that belief, and I don't want to speak for everyone because that's very general. But I just feel like it's become such an operational thing. Like, it's a transactional thing. You go to the hospital, you get the epidural, you deliver your baby, you leave, you go in for a checkup every week for how many weeks. And like, it's just very standardized, which of course like has its place. And I'm not saying mine will be unique in that sense. We are delivering in a hospital, but I do think that it kind of disconnects us from our body and what our bodies were created to do. So I've been reading books that have like helped me connect to my body and honestly cultivate that belief that my body was created to do this, and that as women, we instinctively know what to do around birth and how to handle and approach birth in ways that our body will naturally kind of take over. And I truly and I very firmly believe that. So like I said, it really will be my husband and I and our midwife. Even when it comes to visits at the hospital, I don't want anybody to come visit us at the hospital. Of course, my mom's like, well, if something, like, not that you want to speak it into existence, but if something were to happen, like, she's like, I'm going to be there and you have no control over that. And I'm like, yes, in the rare instance that something happens where, you know, there's an issue or something, of course I want my family to be there. But again, I just don't anticipate spending a lot of time at the hospital. I know you have to stay there for about like 24 to 48 hours. And that rule kind of varies depending on like the clinic that you go to, the practitioner you're working with, the midwives you're working with. Sometimes that time can be a little bit shorter. But again, like I want that to be a special time with my husband, me, and our child, because I want my family to meet our child. Like that is so important to me. And I don't want people to feel like I don't want them there, but I know that is just such a blissful time. Even when I've had friends text me that they've delivered and they send photos of their baby, I'm like, enjoy this blissful time. I will hear all about it when you're ready to share, but like savor this moment, because it's not very often that you have 24 to 48 hours with just your immediate family and just you three, right? And so, or I guess however many babies you have, but we are just having one. We are having one boy. At least that is what we're anticipating is a boy. We were like, what if we get to delivery and it's a girl? I'm like, well, then every outfit that we've bought for him, we're just going to put a bow on her head and it's going to become a girl outfit. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not buying new clothes or I'm not changing the theme of the nursery. Like it's going to be fine. No, but we fully anticipate it being a boy. But again, like just having that time together as a family, I know for me, I like my time by myself. I like my time with my husband, and it's a huge life change, right? Regardless of how gracefully you transition into this, it's a life change. And I know for me, it's going to be a very, I don't want to say earth-shattering because I'm so excited for it, but it's just going to be an adjustment. And I'm really excited for that time frame to just, again, be at the hospital together. So that kind of leads me into postpartum. Of course, like I can't sit on here and tell you, oh, labor is going to look like this, or I anticipate this happening, because even like these next 4 weeks, I'm 36 and a half-ish weeks right now. I'm like these next 4 weeks, essentially like I could have the kid at any time. I'm not anticipating that happening, but it's possible. And so even during this, I'm like, okay, there's some things I need to get done. There are some things I need to prepare for because I have no control, right? God knows when this is going to happen. This baby knows when he's ready to come. But like for me as the mother, I got no control over it. So I'm trying to like work ahead in a work sense as well, but also understanding like this is something in my life that I have very minimal control over of when this child decides to come. So I want to talk more about the postpartum period because that's something I can anticipate a little bit more, I can prepare a little bit more for, and share what I've done research on and decided to invest in to support my body postpartum. And I really think this desire to talk about this comes from just my almost frustration around the cultural differences in how we choose to take care of our bodies as women after we deliver. You know, it's something that women are doing every single day. I mean, I don't even know how many babies are born every day, but it's a lot. And so it's become something where it's like, yeah, you had a kid, awesome. If you have more kids, you just kind of get back into rather regular routines and rhythms, and not saying you abandon your body after you deliver, but really birth in labor is something that, I mean, it's a huge stress on your body. And if you don't support it properly, it can really impact your health later on. And I've been reading the book, The First 40 Days, or I have read the book by Heng U. I definitely am pronouncing that wrong. But it was so big for me to actually think about how I'm going to take care of myself after I have the baby. Because we can think about, oh, we're going to decorate the nursery and we're going to get this crib and this stroller and this car seat. And I've kind of shared that in the past. Like, yeah, I think those things are important, but I am much more concerned about my physical body and my baby's physical body, and my emotional health and how that impacts their emotional health than all these extra fluffy things that we try to add to pregnancy. And they're valuable, they're important, yes, but at the same time, if you're not taking care of yourself and you've been neglecting your body while pregnant, I do think that will show in how your body recovers after you deliver. And I know that's kind of brutal, and that's not to put shame or judgment on anyone, because if you just don't know what you don't know. If I wouldn't have read this book, I would have not known any of these nutritional changes, these herbal remedies that I want to use to support my body. I really wouldn't have even been opened up to that world or thought about postpartum. And I think that's a question we almost need to ask mothers more often, is like, what's your plan for postpartum? Not when are you going back to work? How much time are you taking off from work? But how are you going to eat? How are you going to take care of your mental health? How are you going to kind of isolate your family in a sense for a period of time so you can bond and create a connection with your child, and your husband can create a connection with your child because they haven't been carrying them for the last 9+ months. And that connection really comes after you deliver. It doesn't really come while you're pregnant. So that's a very valuable time. And I know everybody, like, work schedules do impact that, which can be a factor. But in this book, they talk about how mothers are treated after they deliver, and how, if you think about going to visit your friend who's had a baby, and I'm guilty of this, I'm sure in the past when it was cousins or family, it was like, oh, let me hold your baby. Oh, they're so cute, right? We don't often care for the mother necessarily or ask how the mother is doing after they deliver, because it's seen as, okay, you gave our family this child, we're going to love on this child. You as the mother, and I'm speaking very generalized, kind of get disregarded. And I don't like that. I don't like that is how we view postpartum, or how families have maybe viewed that postpartum time. And you even look at culturally, in the US, I think maybe you get 6 weeks unless you file for disability. Then you maybe get 8 to 12 weeks if you work in healthcare, which should be the place of all places that they would give you an extended amount of time, knowing the stress and the impact that delivering a child has on your body. And it's kind of disgusting to me, truthfully, how little time we give moms after they've had a child to get back into work. And in other cultures, and I want to say it was Switzerland, but don't quote me on that, they get 6 months of time off, 6 months to a year, depending, and they get paid maternity leave even if they themselves are not working at a specific company. If they are a stay-at-home mom and maybe their husband works, or if they're a single mom, they will get paid while they are not working or while they are taking care of their body and their children, up until that 6 months to a year, which just absolutely blows my mind. I even think about myself. I keep kind of inching forward when I'm going to get back into work. March 1st is the last day that I am working with clients one-on-one. There's a couple outliers there, but really March 1st is that day. And then I'm taking 8 weeks from March 1st, unless of course I don't deliver till later on in March, but the due date is mid-March. And so kind of factoring in about 6 weeks of fully letting my body recover, which the first 40 days is the book, which is roughly about 6 weeks, and then gradually adding work back in and not just jumping into it like I have been, because my time will be much, much more limited. And in my days that I'm working will be limited because my husband will then be at home. He gets 3 months off for his paternity leave, which is incredible. But at the same time, as I transition back into work, I'm going to have to adjust my schedule. Even, I have family around here that can take care of our kid if they need to. But at the same time, when the school year starts and my mom is back at work, that will look different. So there's so much planning and so many things that could change and so many variables. But like I said, again, coming to my body and how I can support my body, because that is something that is in my control, that's what I'm going to touch on today. But just some things that I want to share with you as you think about postpartum is that you and your baby are really one unit during pregnancy. And when you enter, or once you deliver, that baby is still seeing you as one unit until they're about 1 year old. And when I heard that for the first time, it blew my mind. And it made, postpartum depression or anxiety that mothers feel, or, babies being really fussy or upset. It made that make sense when I see how quickly we enter back into, or we try to enter back into our normal routine without really giving your baby also that time with you if they still view themselves and you as one unit up until 1 year. So it really then also shifted in my mind of okay, what type of time do I want to spend with my child? What time am I going to allow myself to work during the week so that I can primarily be with my child and still run a business? I've had to really reflect on those things, because that's a huge that could be a huge disruption for your child. And again, I'm not putting guilt on you if you go back to a regular job 6 weeks or you have to go back earlier. There are things that are not in our control, and I don't say that. And I say nothing in today's episode to put guilt on anyone who's done one way or another in how they've recovered or taken care of their children. But just some of this research that's come out around that just blows my mind. Along with too, this is just with your uterus. It can take 6 to 8 weeks for it to return back to normal size. So if you think about recovery, even getting back into exercise, I've heard some people that are really into CrossFit, they're like, well, yeah, after 2 weeks, I was back in the gym. I'm like, your body is like under so much stress. It needs to heal for so much longer than you've given it. And I know this will be the hardest thing for me because I love to exercise. I love to strength train. That has become a consistent habit for me. I mean, it's been since junior high. Like, I truly do love exercise now and movement. So taking 6 to 8 weeks off, essentially, I'm still going to implement walking and getting outside, getting fresh air, very gradual movement, stretching. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it will be so hard to not exercise for 6 to 8 weeks. But I've also then kind of shifted how I'm preparing my body for that time. Like, I've been really focused around building muscle and strength training and lifting heavy and doing higher bursts of cardio for longer durations of time. And then because I know, even like if you think about contractions, that's about 2 to 3 minutes, or every 2 to 3 minutes when you have contractions, your body is, you have to process that, right? Like the deep breathing and you're pushing your body, or your body is honestly kind of doing it to itself for good reason, pushing it to be really uncomfortable. And so I'm kind of training in a way that resembles that. And the episode that I did with Stacey Osborne, I believe, of Victorious Strength Gym, I'm not speaking very properly around that, but I will link that episode in the description because she talks too about like when you are pregnant, not just not exercising, but changing how you exercise. So I've been building strength. I've been doing longer durations, like I said, of cardio, because that does push me mentally. And I know with contractions, I want to be able to kind of breathe through that and have built up some of that mental toughness, I guess, for lack of better words, when I am going through that physically and my body is experiencing that. Other things too is if you are able to spend at least 6 weeks really just relaxing, being at home, being around people that feel supportive and that are there to support you, eating really nourishing foods, taking care of your physical body, like I said, because it's typically is responsible for sustaining the life of your little person. There's also studies that show tremendous decreases in postpartum depression when you take that time to rest and support your body, like I said, and have the support system to do that. So that's really where my why comes from. I really want to, and I've kind of like amped this up in my brain since finding out we were expecting, because again, I'm somebody, if I don't reinforce this in myself, same like with the breastfeeding thing, if I don't reinforce, no, you are taking this amount of time for rest. This is how you are filling that time for rest. This is how you are supporting your body as you rest your body. If I don't just continuously tell myself that, I will try to do way too much, way too fast. So I've had to really walk myself through that this entire experience and honestly think probably more about postpartum than I have about labor, because I know if I even budge a little bit on some of these, I don't want to call them rules because it's not like they're so set in stone that I will never shift them or adjust them, or if I see it's not working well for me, I won't adapt. But I have really laid this out because I want the people around me to kind of know the expectation. I also want to have the support systems in place if things were to happen. I want to have food prepped ahead of time so I know that I'm nourishing my body with healing foods. And that's really where my why comes from. It's because it's really a protection mechanism for myself to not overdo it. And I would say I'm very guilty of overdoing it, and I'm probably pretty known for doing that sometimes. And I just don't want this to be another one of those times. And so that's again why I've really clung to this first 40 days of how I'm going to spend my time. So I want to get into the foods that I'm going to focus on consuming, especially that first 24 to 48 hours afterwards. And this, again, is where no judgment comes in. If you deliver and you're like, I need a burger from McDonald's and some French fries, more power to you. It is a very intense experience. At least I've seen it be an intense experience, very high energy output. So yeah, it makes sense why you want a very high calorie meal after you deliver. But for me, I really want to focus on warm foods. And this concept of warm foods also comes from just lowering the stress in your body, especially digestively. And warm foods are just very healing. That's why when we talked about cool and warm foods, I recorded an episode on that as well, of when you get sick or in the winter, really increasing your intake of warm foods to cause less stress on your body so that your immune system can work a little bit more efficiently and you don't, again, have a lot of digestive stress, which can cause issues throughout your entire body, right? We all know how important gut health is. And so I also really want to focus on spices that are really rich, like turmeric and ginger. Those are anti-inflammatory spices. Doing some more high energy or I would say high energy inducing carbs. So white rice, jasmine rice, some sourdough for that quick energy, high quality carbs in general, and really just having a higher calorie meal, higher calories in the sense of carbs and protein and especially fats, because I do plan to breastfeed. I want to make sure that I am increasing my intake of healthy fats during that time as well, and to support the energy output that was put into the labor experience. I've also kind of been planning, and these are things that I'm planning on actually bringing with me to the hospital. We've talked about our midwives, and some hospitals maybe have rules around food you can bring in. I personally have worked at the hospital that I'm delivering in, and I know what their cafeteria experience is like, and so I'm like, we're just going to make a grocery list of foods and snacks that I can bring with me and have a cooler with us. That way, postpartum, I have some of these things available to me and we're not ordering from like DoorDash. And I was actually talking to Nate. I'm like, kind of silly for us not to just utilize the hospital food because we're paying so much to be in a hospital. But at the same time, I want to nourish my body really, really well. And so having food prepped ahead of time is a way that I'm planning on doing that. I also am going to be bringing dates and prunes for digestive ease. Constipation can be a result of, or you can experience constipation for like those 24 to 48 hours plus after you deliver. So making sure I have things and resources if that were to be something I experienced. I also am going to be bringing electrolytes with me to have during delivery, also postpartum. So this is going to look like coconut water, that Celtic sea salt, and then some fresh lemon or lime juice. I'll probably make like a jug of that just to have with us, or have it in mason jars that, again, we can take with us to the hospital. And I feel like this all sounds a little silly if you're like, okay, Bailey, really, is it that extreme? Like, do you need to go to these extremes? For my own peace of mind, yes, I do. And I am going to go to these extremes. I don't think there's anything wrong, again, like I've been saying, in doing what you think you need to do to support your body. I could get to the hospital and it could be a completely different experience, and I could end up door dashing fast food. Again, I'm not saying I'm not going to do those things, but I want to at least have some things there to support me. I'm also probably going to pack some chopsticks, some cuties, right? Some fruits and veggies that I can have, high protein sources. I'm not exactly sure what this is going to look like. It'll probably include like a trip to Whole Foods, because our local Walmart, although has okay snack options or grab and go options, they're not always the best. So I do need to create a list of those foods that I'm hoping to take with us to the hospital. But really, as I think about, again, nourishing my body and giving my body the fuel it needs, both for milk production, but also recovery, I'm thinking about increasing, and this is how I choose to say this too, because I'm not going to say I'm going to completely restrict certain things, because I don't think that's helpful for me or for anyone. But I'm going to focus more on organ meats and ground beef, Those are pretty easy to digest, super high in B vitamins, and that's something that I know will be depleted postpartum that I want to increase. I will supplement with my beef organ supplements then if I need to, because I don't maybe have access to that or don't feel like I'm getting enough intake of that. Also going to continue to implement raw milks and cheeses. I have been doing raw milk throughout my entire pregnancy. Something that is very controversial in itself is raw milk for a variety of reasons, but it has been such a nourishing food. It is a living food, and I truly cannot speak highly enough about it and how good I felt and how much energy I felt and how satisfied I felt just digestive wise by having raw milk. And I do that every single day. Raw milk latte. I rarely skip. It makes such a difference in both how I feel, and I think it is one of the most nutrient dense foods you can consume is raw milk, not ultra pasteurized or unpasteurized milk. I personally can't recommend it enough, and I've been doing that throughout my entire pregnancy. I'm also going to lean in on those healthy fats like avocados, coconut cream, coconut milk, olive oil, avocado oil, ghee, raw butter that I would make from our raw milk, which I'm still going to be getting throughout postpartum. I was telling Nathan too, I'm like, well, you'll have all this time off. Like, you can always go get our raw milk. But my mom and our neighbor and I, we just kind of like rotate. So that'll be easy to be consistent with those fats. Really, like I said, because I plan to breastfeed, want to make sure I'm getting a lot of fat and a lot of protein in my diet. I don't track calories, and I know there are different calorie amounts that they will say that you should have if you're breastfeeding. I've seen upwards of like over 3,000 calories. I will not track unless milk production is something that is low. My midwife and I have talked about this, so she's like, there's no reason to think that or assume that. We're just going to assume that everything will go very smoothly based off of anatomically. I don't know. I don't think I'm saying that right. Anyway, based off of me and my physical structure, she's like, there's no reason to believe that this will not work for you. But again, I know I do need to increase calories if I'm doing that. And so fats are going to be a big one, like I said. Also like lentils and jasmine rice, sourdough products, grains, and beans that are very, again, easy to digest, but super high in that carbohydrate intake, so they're going to give me energy as well. And then those spices like ginger, cinnamon, cumin, and turmeric. Again, I'm thinking mostly about how I can keep the temperature of my food and my beverages very warm. As my body for that 6 to 8 weeks postpartum works to heal and recover, I want it to be warm, comforted, and just really well nourished with very warm, and like I said, warm foods, but also warm spices, right? Like cumin and cinnamon and ginger and turmeric. So then I'm going to focus less on consuming raw fruits and vegetables, conventional dairy, just because that causes issues with my digestive system, and any sort of digestive stress that I have, I typically feel that physically by just like being very puffy, my fingers will swell. And so minimizing as much as I can anything that would be pasteurized dairy, because I can do raw dairy, oddly enough, being lactose intolerant. Honestly, I would say raw milk and pasteurized milk are two completely different food groups. They aren't really even comparable, even though they're technically like the same product of being milk. But I'm able to digest raw milk and raw dairy really well, but anything pasteurized doesn't sit well still, even through healing my gut. And so that's something I still really want to minimize. Minimizing those low quality foods, which we already do pretty consistently, like the oils, the sugars, not doing too much sugar, just because that, blood sugar imbalances that can come from really overdoing on the sugar, or just the energy that your body's getting that's not super beneficial for your overall health. Not saying sugar is bad in any sense, but I'm thinking more of like the high fructose corn syrups, or that quick energy source from something super high in sugar. I'm really, like I said, going to go towards more grounding foods that would be protein and fats. Ice cream would be another one, because that's a very cool food, or too much caffeine. I've been doing caffeine during pregnancy, but just about 200 milligrams max. I don't measure that specifically, but I only try to have one source of caffeine per day. And again, reducing alcohol, which is something that I don't plan on consuming postpartum anyway, just because I didn't really do that prior to pregnancy, and so something that I don't see as necessary for me. But why, kind of the why around focusing on warm foods is it can increase or kind of improve your recovery time. So increase your recovery time and your energy levels. Like I said, improving lactation for breastfeeding, and really it just allows you to rest and not feel all these jolts of energy that can come by having, like I said, food super high in sugar, having things that are more grounding, more stabilizing. And this is something that I'm also going to be kind of planning ahead for. So in the next week or so, I will need to start getting on this, but really prepping ahead and canning in some mason jars a variety of soups, which I'm going to actually ask my mom and my grandma to help me with, just because I know they've offered their help and I need to get better at accepting help, because that's something that is all, throughout all of this, I know I'm going to have to learn too, is just accepting help. And so I'm going to prep a variety of different soups. We have meat in our freezer, so I'm going to do like some roasts. That way I can roasts and have that accessible. Not to say I won't be excited and eager to cook postpartum, but I just want to have some things ready where if I'm like, hey Nate, can you warm up this soup? It's just, okay, yeah, we put it in the fridge the night before, let it thaw, then we warm it up the next day. I'm also going to be prepping some sourdough and some rice that's made with bone broth. Again, just some things that can be in the freezer that we can take out and have really easily. And that are just very, like I said, very, very nourishing, warm, comforting foods. So there's other rules that I'm kind of establishing, and I don't like rules. Maybe I should say guides instead. Different guidelines that I'm wanting to follow within this first 40 days. Again, kind of following this off the book is where the 40 days comes in. It is not a rigid 40 days, but like I said, as me being somebody who would be more inclined to overcommit before my body's physically ready or emotionally ready, I'm kind of just requiring that first 40 days of myself to just chill. Okay, so this also will be reflecting on boundaries around visit times, and I don't want people to feel like I don't want them there. I think that is where setting boundaries is difficult, because it's not like I don't want all my friends and family to come see them as soon as possible, but I do want to have some boundaries around it. And that's something I've communicated with my husband that we'll probably just keep between us and our families and friends, because I don't really think it needs to be something you also implement these specific boundaries. But I also know even when it comes to communication, I really want to reduce my amount of time on my phone. And so for a lot of the communication of coming to see our child and visit, I'm actually giving that responsibility to my husband to coordinate, because I personally don't want that, and I don't want to spend time on my phone. I know I talked last week about the Sabbath, and I noticed so many times I crossed that boundary of being on my phone or opening up social media on a Sunday, and it just irritates me because it's such habit, and I want that habit to break. And so part of that habit breaking and me embracing the rest and recovery period of time is putting some of that responsibility on my husband and having him be the one to coordinate when people come see us, connecting, sharing, photos with our friends and family. Of course, I'm more than willing to do that, but I want him to have that responsibility. Also around this resting and letting other people support me, which is going to feel really probably uncomfortable. When I have people over, I feel like I kind of go into that hostess mode, which we all probably do, of like, do you need food? Do you need water? Do you want a coffee? And I'm going to try to take that pressure off of myself and not feel like I have to entertain when people come over, which is going to be very difficult, but I'm going to lean, I know, a lot both on my husband and on my mom during that time. Also, I don't want to deplete my adrenal glands. So I know looking at a screen, looking at a computer, looking at a TV depletes your adrenals, and that's why hydration, especially while breastfeeding and as your body recovers, is super, super crucial. But if you're actively depleting your adrenals, you're going to need even more water intake to support your body. So I, again, want to spend minimal time on a screen, which is why I've given some of that responsibility, like I said, of contacting people to my husband, but also wearing my red light glasses if I'm on my phone or on my computer, but really not having that be a time when I utilize those things. I want this to really be a time for myself to read more, to learn, not even learn. There's already going to be so much learning happening, but more so of like what I choose to consume. I want it to be things that maybe I have an interest in that I haven't given myself the time or haven't made the time to learn more about. Even going through the blood work course that I did, I feel like I've learned so much, but there's so much information out there that I have yet to like really immerse myself in. And so I want to go back and kind of revisit some of that curriculum and utilize this 40 days. Obviously, number one priority is my child. Number two priority, well, number one and number two, they're both kind of together. My husband and my child. My child, because like I said, is going to be very, very reliant on me. I know that that is a huge, huge piece of my day-to-day will be that. However, I want to, if I have the time, spend it, like I said, reading, learning, relearning, and not putting pressure on myself. Like I want to just have fun with learning. I think there's always been so much pressure for me to learn so I can get this certification so I can then specialize in this and then take on clients and support them this way. And this is all like stripping that back, right? Stripping back the external and learning things that I want to learn for the sake of learning and supporting my body, my family's bodies, and our emotional health, and then implementing that into my business if I see it aligns. And so just kind of reviewing or viewing learning in a different way. I also want to wake up, not early, wake up and get sunlight in the morning. I mean, waking up is not 100% going to be in my control, but I want to, as soon as I get up, get up, get some fresh air with me and baby if we can, get in the sunlight, sitting underneath the windows. There's this grounding mat that I really, really want to get, but it's definitely an investment. And I'm like, Bailey, is this necessary? I'm like, well, if you have a child in March, right, it's not 100% guaranteed that you're going to be able to get outside and get fresh air every day. So having a grounding and infrared sauna mat would be just top tier, which is, I'm not sure if that's something I'm going to invest in or not. I've talked to Nathan about it. I'm like, a push present, right? Like, and he's like, people really do that. Like, you're not joking. I'm like, no, I'm not saying you need to get me a gift for having a child. I'm just saying it would be really nice to have this grounding and infrared sauna mat. So we will see. I think that would be really great. I've done a lot of research on it and I know which one I would get, just if we're not able to get outside and be in the sun and get that fresh air. But really those are kind of like the other guides that I'm wanting to follow around that time. So then I want to kind of just wrap up this with talking about the products that I'm implementing postpartum, because I really firmly believe in the foundations, right? If I would not be consuming enough protein, consuming enough water, getting in the sun, taking time to reduce stress on my body, and eat warming foods that are very healing and nourishing, I have no business buying a grounding mat or honestly buying any of these products. However, because those things have become foundational for me and they have become staples in my routine, I do believe there are products that can support your body postpartum outside of the foundations, okay? So the first one is an afterbirth SIDS bath, and this is something that you can do 1 to 3 times per day for about 2 weeks, and I'm planning to steep. It's like a tea. It's like a loose leaf tea. You steep it, and then I would add it to that peri bottle that you use in your lower region to help with cleanliness down there, all these fun things, right? But what are the herbs that are used in this bath? And I got it from Wish Garden. I got the other supplement that I'm going to talk to you about, or herbal tincture, from Wish Garden as well. But it has Uva Ursi, and I'm not going to pronounce these herbs right. And if you know how to pronounce herbs, you're going to cringe when I say it. You probably know by now I'm not the best at pronouncing things properly all the time, so bear with me. But that can reduce the bacteria in your urine. And then the Yarrow Aerials, that can relax and soothe muscles in your intestines and your uterus, right? As that uterus contracts and comes back to its normal size throughout about 6 to 8 weeks. It can just relieve some of that uncomfortableness that can come from that. Sage leaf, that can reduce inflammation because it's rich in rosmarinic acid. That's something I recently learned. Lavender flower, very soothing. Witch hazel leaf, that can fight bacteria, even very intense strands of bacteria. So that was one that I knew I wanted to have in this sitz bath. Also, plantain leaf can be great for inflamed skin or wound healing. Calendula flower increases blood flow and oxygen to those wounded areas, and it can also increase the firmness and hydration in your skin. And then the Gacha Cola aerials, I need to take like a pronunciation for herbs class. I took a home apothecary course, and again, like as much as I try, it really is hard for my mouth to form these words. Anyway, but that increases circulation in the body, increases blood flow. So then that is what, like I said, I'm going to be planning to use like 1 to 3 times per day in a peri bottle for about 2 weeks is the plan. Then After Ease is another one. Now this was in the Guide to Birth book that I had gone through that they really recommended after you give birth because it can help your uterus to contract back to that normal size and minimize the discomfort that can come with that. I think we think a lot about the contractions while you're in active labor, but not so much about how your body and your uterus is like actively contracting postpartum, which is something, truthfully, I didn't know was a thing until I started reading different books as I got pregnant. And I was like, oh, so it's not like all that discomfort, just goes away. Your body, as it recovers, is still going to experience maybe some uncomfortableness or just tightness and tension in certain areas. So After Ease is what this tincture is called. It has black haw bark, which relaxes your uterus. Yarrow aerials, that is a really good one for soothing your uterus, like you would have heard in the sitz bath. It's also in this one. And then motherwort, that prevents and can stop bleeding. So if excess bleeding is occurring, you do bleed for a period of time after you deliver. So not saying that will 100% prevent bleeding, but hopefully minimize bleeding. And then cramp bark, obviously in its name, reduces cramping. I'm also adding in Perfect Aminos. This is a new supplement that I actually haven't tried yet, but I'm planning to order. And it contains amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein that help your body build muscle and collagen. And it can also support your DNA health. And so I know that because I'm planning to, just for recovery in general, I don't want to say just if you're breastfeeding, you should be eating more. For recovery in general, like your body needs fuel, it needs calories, it needs energy. And I'm someone like, I just don't like to force myself to eat more food just because I know I need to eat more food. And so this would give me that adequate source of protein without having a super high calorie intake. Not that, again, I'm watching calories, but I'm giving my body the amino acids it needs to build and support my structure without feeling like I have to eat 4 to 6 eggs just to do that. I think the comparison too of like how your body actually absorbs this is it absorbs 99% of the amino acids, which are those building blocks of protein to support your muscle strength and structure, versus like even eggs, that I think was 48% maybe is actually absorbed. And then like a whey, soy, or pea protein only absorbs 18% of that to build muscle. And so it's a really powerhouse of a product that I'm really excited to try just because I know I won't actively be exercising. I do want to still have enough protein intake. This is in a liquid beverage form, which I think will be a lot easier because I can pair it with my electrolytes and make sure I'm still getting enough protein every single day. And then creatine. That's something I already take consistently for bone structure and supporting muscle growth. And again, if I'm not strength training for that 6 to 8 weeks, I still want my structure to be supported. And so I will continue to take creatine during that time as well. So kind of doing some beverages mixed with warm, nourishing foods. Just because, like I said, it's really hard for me to force myself to eat if I kind of like need to eat, maybe for milk production or just for recovery. I don't want to feel like I'm not eating intuitively, but also understanding I do need more food. It's really hard, and it's been something I've kind of navigated during pregnancy as well, of like not just eating to eat because your body needs fuel, but eating to nourish your body and eating intuitively, like it looks and it feels differently. And I do believe our body communicates with us what it needs, but I want to have like 1 to 2 beverages I can lean on to give me some extra support. Obviously not in replacement of drinking enough water to support my body, which is 1 ounce of water per pound body weight, and consuming enough protein to support my body, which is 1 gram per pound body weight. So those are like the 2 foundational pieces. Now I'm just thinking about how I can add in to support my body at another level. Also, red light is a big one. I talked about like the grounding mat and the infrared mat that I would love to have. Yes, that'd be a bonus resource, but I'm also going to be switching the lights in our bedroom. Actually, we can already have them be on red light, which is so nice. They're just rechargeable and they have a remote. So we've even been utilizing that now. And so I plan like if I have to feed at night or get up during the night, middle of the night, which I know I will, having a red light on instead of a very, synthetic lighting, which as warm as we have lights in our house, like all of our bulbs are very warm. At the same time, that red light is just so soothing, and I notice it doesn't disrupt sleep. And so even if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm able to fall asleep pretty fast if that red light is on, and that's the only lighting that I see. So we'll lean on red light. Also is really good for melatonin production and to get that baby in the routine of kind of that sleep routine. Although it's going to look different than our typical sleep routine right now, I want to utilize those tools to support melatonin production and reduce the stress on their little bodies. And then I also, last thing that I've invested in is 100% cotton. Like I got a set to wear for at the hospital, also like with underwear and bras. It's just a lot more gentle on skin. I've had a lot of rashes happen during pregnancy for a variety of reasons. I would assume because my body is, sustaining the life of another, and I maybe should be eating a little bit more or making some adjustments to the clothing that I'm wearing in those more private areas. So making the switch to wearing bras and underwear that is very supportive and gentle on my skin. Very comfortable, loose, baggy clothing. And yeah, that's just kind of been a priority. Definitely an investment. Something that's very new for me is investing in quality clothing. Something I haven't really done in the past because I thought more was better, or I wanted something cheaper. And now I'm realizing that the quality of clothes, especially in those more private areas, is just very, very important. So leaning on, again, what's touching my skin, what's touching the baby's skin, and the clothing that they're also wearing. All right, so that kind of wraps it up. Maybe there were some new concepts here for me. A lot of this was very new. Until I got pregnant, I didn't really do a ton of research on foods and all of the things, but I've been excited to share this because I think it can be really big, and I'm excited to share how this works to support my body as well. So if you're interested in following along with my life outside of the podcast, you can find me at Nourish with Bailey on Instagram. Otherwise, Bailey Seaton on everything else. If you need support, you have prayer requests, you can enter that all through my website, which is linked in the description of today's episode. I want to hear what you need support in, what you need prayers over, so please don't hesitate to submit those throughout the week so I can pray over you both on the podcast, but also in my own personal life. I am just so excited to enter into this season of life, to meet our little guy, and we have an appointment Thursday, so the day after you're listening, to do a 3D ultrasound so we can see their little squishy face, and it's just going to be so exciting. So please continue to pray for us as well throughout this, and pray for me if you would be willing throughout postpartum, knowing that this is going to be an adjustment. I'm also praying for all you mothers out there who are expecting or have had babies. So many babies are being born around me, and it's just such a special time. So really just thinking about you and praying for you as well. All right, so with that, I will talk to you again next Wednesday. Bye.